The ABCs of horror.
Welcome to the HellBound Horror Show. This is it. Tonight is the final night. Happy Halloween, everybody. So tonight's review, I wanted to find a movie that really could have a lasting impression on people, and a movie that would showcase my maturity when it came to horror films. So we're going to do the one where the zombie fights the shark. When we took a look at Return of the Living Dead, we dove into the confusing sequels of Night of the Living Dead. Return of the Living Dead is a pseudo-sequel to Night of the Living Dead, even though Dawn of the Dead is the actual sequel. The timeline sort of splits, and I wish that was the end of the confusion, but unfortunately, things get a lot worse. Dawn of the Dead was released in 1978. George Romero was good friends with Italian horror master Dario Argento and allowed Dario to edit the film and release it in Italy under the title Zombi. That's with an I, not an IE. Dario had the Italian band Goblin redo the whole soundtrack. Zombi was a huge success, and when movies are a big success, companies want to cash in on it. This next part's a little interesting and may not be true today, but was true for the time. Apparently, under Italian copyright law, any movie can be marketed as a sequel. And in hindsight, this makes total sense. There are tons of Italian sequels to movies that seemingly have no connection to the original. And that's the case here. Since Zombie did so well, work on a sequel was quickly underway. So did this sequel have anything to do with the original? No, of course not. So not only do we have two sequels to Night of the Living Dead in Dawn of the Dead and Return of the Living Dead, but now we have two sequels to Dawn of the Dead in Day of the Dead and Zombie 2, and that's Zombie with an I. And the confusing part, this gets so much worse because Return of the Living Dead and the Zombie franchise both went on to create their own sequels and own series. This gets so confusing. Also, Zombie 2 is only the title of the movie sometimes. This in and of itself is confusing. The film is also referred to as Island of the Living Dead, The Dead Walk Among Us, Zombie 2, The Dead Are Among Us, Zombie Flesh Eaters, and Nightmare Island. And the worst is the US release. You can't call it Zombie 2 because the US never had Zombie, we just had Dawn of the Dead. So what do we call this movie? We call it Zombie with an IE. That's not going to get confusing at all. Even when Googling it, not all of the sources agree with what it should be called. But who knows? This could turn out to be a good movie. I mean, after all, it did create sequels of its own. And the other spin-off, Return of the Living Dead, turned out to be fantastic. I have heard whispers about this movie for some time, and I've seen that poster like everywhere. I have high hopes going in, so let's get started. The opening of the film does not disappoint. No title screen, no text, just a gun pointed at the camera. We cut to a human wrapped in a white sheet and bound by rope. The tension is there, especially for people who have seen a zombie film before. The human under the sheet begins to rise, and the gun's trigger is pulled. Shot to the head. It's a beautiful, gory mess. The white sheet contrasts the dark elements and all of the blood. Plus, it dehumanizes it a bit, which makes it oddly scary. It's very effective. Then the man with a gun, who is now cast in shadow, lets someone else know to get the boat ready and to tell the crew. And that's it. The title card fades in, and so does the droning soundtrack. It's super effective at pulling the audience in. However, things are about to slow down quite a bit. We cut to right outside New York City, where we see an abandoned boat floating in the water. The Coast Guard goes out to figure out what exactly happened, and oops, there's a zombie on board. You'll notice that for 1979, the gore is pretty well done and overly excessive. In fact, many countries banned this movie, and in the United Kingdom, it was listed as one of their video nasties. Eventually, this film was able to get an X rating, but it had to cut about 2 minutes of total runtime. After taking care of the zombie, the news is trying to figure out what is going on. There's this empty boat, a dead policeman, and a lot of questions. So they send out Peter West, a reporter, to uncover the mystery. We also meet Anne, whose father owned the boat. But she doesn't know exactly where her father is, and he's been missing for some time. Peter stalks Anne as she sneaks onto the boat at night, looking for some clues. Eventually, they find a clue together, a letter that Anne's father wrote to her. The letter lets her know that he loves her and that he's going to pass away on a small island in the Caribbean. Peter and Anne decide to go together to the Caribbean to see if they can figure all of this out. Meanwhile, that dead police officer? Well, maybe he's not so dead after all. Let's cut to the Caribbean island where we meet Dr. Menard, played by Richard Johnson. Richard Johnson was in Beyond the Door, which is a movie that I reviewed at the beginning of the month, and it's funny that we've gone full circle, huh? Dr. Menard is a scientist stationed on a small Caribbean island. He not only helps out the sick in the hospital, but he also does research on the phenomena of the dead rising from the grave. He's accompanied by his wife, who isn't so supportive of his career. The next night, the zombies attack their house, and they end up killing the wife in one of the most gruesome deaths that I can think of. It's gory, and if you know the scene, you know what I'm talking about. I honestly don't want to give away too much, but it's really well done. It's just super hard to watch. Let's get back to Peter and Anne as they travel to the Caribbean. It's just too bad that they're going to need a boat to get to the small island. Luckily for them, they meet a couple who own a boat, Susan and Brian. They all decide to travel together. While on their way, Susan thinks it would be a good idea to go swimming. She dives into the water with her oxygen tank and there's a shark in the water. Everything is done with a real shark, and even though you can tell that it's in a controlled environment, there's no denying the tangible shark in the same frame as Susan. It gives life to the scene. As she hides from the sea beast, she runs into even more trouble. There's a zombie in the water. Luckily, Susan was able to get away, but the shark is still hungry, and so is the zombie. We get maybe the coolest showdown ever. Shark versus zombie. Round 1. Fight! The zombie rips off some of the shark and begins devouring it. Sushi. Yum. But the shark is doing some remodeling at home and needs a hand. This is a great fight and honestly so cool to see. There is an actual person in the water with an actual shark and they just wrestle around. Fun note, the person who was supposed to play the zombie ended up getting sick, so that's actually the shark's handler in the water with him. That is so cool. Once on land, the gang finds Dr. Menard. He explains that he was friends with Anne's father, and he was the one that sent the boat up to deliver the letter to her. Unfortunately, Dr. Menard has some work to do, so he sends the gang up to check up on his wife. They find her dead body being feasted upon by multiple zombies. They have to race back to the hospital for one last showdown as the zombie population quickly gets out of hand. The movie quickly picks up after this point, and the final showdown is entertaining. It may not be the most original movie, but it does what it sets out to do. It ups the gore from Dawn of the Dead and gives the audience more zombies. Zombie 2 made more at the box office than Zombie 1, which is super impressive, and no wonder why there's a ton of sequels. The movie is gory for sure. Not all of the effects hold up, but they do have their charm to them. There's not a ton of tension to be found, and the plot is paper thin. Characters are fairly one-dimensional outside of Richard Johnson's character. It's serviceable for sure, and has moments that are unforgettable, such as the eye scene, and of course, the zombie versus shark scene. I talked a little bit in my Return of the Living Dead review about how in most zombie movies, if you're smart and a little lucky, you could survive. That's especially the case in this movie, except for the fact that every single character is so dumb. It honestly irritated me. The characters never learned from their mistakes. Brian is the worst example of this by far. When they had a vehicle, he drove it right into a tree, and he never tried to touch the brakes. That made me annoyed, but if that was his only fault, I guess it would be forgivable. He learns that by shooting zombies in the head, he can take them out, dispose of them, but yet he continues shooting them in the torso. Seriously, he has a shotgun and he's only a few feet away from the zombies. He would barely have to aim at all to dismantle their head. But no, he just shoots them in their torso every single time. It's also his bright idea to throw Molotov cocktails inside the only building that could keep them safe. He won't throw them outside of the building where the zombies are conjugated. Instead, he waits until they break inside and decides to burn down the only building on the island. He does get what he deserves by letting his dead lover eat his chest, though. If you want smart, capable characters in your zombie movies, this movie is not for you. But if you like zombies, gore, and exploitation films from the 70s, then this is right up your alley. And with that, we're done with the reviews. At the beginning of the month, our good friend the Necronomicon promised me one new subscriber. So let's check it out, guys. No. It lied to me. The powers of darkness betrayed me? Oh. Hey, hun.
Yeah?
Can you subscribe to my YouTube channel for me?
Yeah.
Thanks. Happy Halloween, everybody.